In a world where rising seas have swallowed much of the land, this story takes us on a heartwarming adventure. Meet Natsuki, a young boy returning to his small island town after losing his loved ones. There, he discovers Atri, a quirky humanoid robot created by someone who is close to Natsuki. With Atri's bubbly personality and childlike curiosity, they forge a unique bond that exceeds humans and machines. Let's dive deep in the exploration of friendship, emotions, and beautiful moments between Natsuki and Atri that proves love knows no boundaries, even between a boy and a robot. Natsuki, the main character, wakes up from a nightmare about a tragic event from his past where a building collapsed on him, causing a severe leg injury that led to the amputation of his leg. After waking up, he finds Catherine, a woman he knows, in the room with him. She says she brought something that will make him rich. Natsuki, however, accuses her of trying to seduce him and asks her to stay away. He attaches his prosthetic leg, and Catherine insists that this time things will work out because one of her trusted acquaintances assured her that the device she brought is legitimate. Natsuki tells her that she's been fooled many times before. After washing his face, he warns Catherine that she could end up dead if she doesn't start taking life seriously. Angered, Catherine challenges him to try and stop her, then hands him the device. Natsuki takes it, saying it seems better than what they had before, and heads out, muttering that he doesn't care much since there is nothing left for him in this world. As Natsuki climbs to the deck, it becomes clear that they are on a ship in the middle of the sea. Catherine listens to a news broadcast about a rocket launch of a large-scale energy project called Project Amaterasu. She asks Natsuki if the rocket will succeed, and he says it will. Catherine then complains that if they have the resources to launch rockets, they should find a solution to their own living conditions. Natsuki responds grimly that everything is destined to collapse, even if things seem stable. Catherine asks if the ship will survive underwater, and Natsuki sarcastically reminds her that it is her idea to submerge it. He then teasingly calls her an old woman, which angers Catherine, and she firmly tells him to use her name. Suddenly, a girl named Minamo appears, asking Natsuki to go to school with her, but he ignores her. Catherine tells Minamo that it's pointless to chase after Natsuki, teasing her about her feelings. Minamo denies it angrily, saying it's not about love. Natsuki interrupts, saying Catherine is a scammer who shows up with shady deals. Catherine defends herself, claiming that the treasure in his grandmother's house is real. Minamo is confused and asks who his grandmother is. Natsuki reveals that she is Professor Nanko Yachigusa, a marine geologist, and the plan is to use the device to retrieve the treasure from her submerged house. They prepare to enter the ocean using a submarine, and Catherine expresses concern about the danger but also reminds them that they desperately need the money to survive. Minamo questions whether Catherine can be trusted, asking if she'll betray Natsuki after they find the treasure. Natsuki invites Minamo to join them, explaining that it's been many years since anyone entered the ocean and that he needs all the help he can get. He further explains that a sudden rise in sea levels had swallowed coastal towns and cities, though the exact cause remains unknown. Many theories like global warming exist, but none are confirmed.
Don't let Greta Thunberg hear about this theory, please.
She really needs to chill, no pun intended. As Natsuki enters the submarine and prepares to dive, Catherine and Minamo help him release the hooks and operate the crane. Natsuki navigates the submarine into the depths, where they eventually find their old sunken city. While searching, Natsuki makes a shocking discovery, a stasis capsule with a girl sleeping inside. He believes she must be a human android, though she looks incredibly lifelike. As he tries to lift her with hooks, the girl suddenly opens her eyes, startling Natsuki. He loses control of the submarine, crashing it into the ground. This incident triggers painful memories of his past accident. Suddenly, Natsuki sees the girl outside the submarine trying to get in. He orders Minamo to pull the lever, bringing the submarine to the surface. After surfacing, Natsuki starts crying and notices the girl in the water. Without hesitation, he dives in to save her, even though his prosthetic leg falls to the bottom of the ocean. As he admires the sunlight underwater, the girl swims up to him and kisses him. They both emerge from the sea, and everyone wonders if she is truly a human android. The girl confirms she is, surprising them, as they had never seen such a realistic android before. Natsuki and his friends realize that the production of androids like her had stopped long ago, making her very valuable. One friend warns they shouldn't sell her without permission. The android introduces herself as Atri and explains that it would be illegal to sell her without her mistress's approval. She reveals that her mistress is Nanko, who is Natsuki's grandmother. Natsuki sadly informs Atri that Nanko passed away a month ago. Atri accepts the news calmly, as she is programmed not to feel emotions. Atri tells Natsuki she looks forward to working with him, calling him a handsome boy. Natsuki corrects her, saying his name is Natsuki. She explains that being given a name signifies she is recognized as a living being. Minamo, their red-haired friend, leaves for school, reminding them not to to sell Atri until she returns. Catherine asks what they should do next. Natsuki admits he lacks the resources to care for a high-tech android and needs to fix his prosthetic leg. They set off, with Atri moving slowly behind them. Natsuki reassures her that androids cannot disobey their masters. Atri comments that everything feels new to her. When Natsuki asks how long she has been asleep, Atri says she doesn't know, as her memories are missing. Noticing Atri is barefoot, Natsuki takes her to the market to buy shoes. Atri finds a pair and happily says she is grateful for Natsuki's kindness. As they walk, Natsuki collapses due to his old prosthetic leg. Atri helps him up, and they continue to a buyer interested in purchasing her. After examining Atri, the buyer reveals she is a valuable 4th-generation model. The group is thrilled by the high price offered to her. However, Atri suddenly asks them to wait, saying her previous mistress gave her an important order before she went into her long sleep. When they ask what the order is, Atri struggles to remember and surprisingly forgets, just like a human would. As they leave, Natsuki is shocked the dealer offered such a high price for what he considers scrap. Atri gets angry, reminding him that calling a robot scrap violates the anti-robot discrimination law. Catherine decides to take Atri with her to find a better deal. As they leave, Atri's shoe falls off, and Natsuki tries to catch up, but cannot. Later, at home, Natsuki is lost in thought when Atri suddenly appears, telling him that she will be his left from now on. Natsuki is shocked when Atri tells him she'll be his leg from now on. She explains that a robot must be useful to its master, and since Natsuki struggles with his prosthetic leg, she asks him to rely on her. She lifts him onto her shoulders, runs to a small boat, and attempts to jump into the sky with him. However, they both fall into the sea. The next morning, Atri is confused, saying she should have been able to make the jump with Natsuki's weight. She wants to try again, but Natsuki asks why she didn't go with Catherine. Atri explains that Catherine ran away after debt collectors appeared, telling Atri to hide while she escaped on her own. Realizing why Catherine is so obsessed with money, Natsuki lets Atri make breakfast, but she accidentally drops an egg, causing a fire. She panics, unsure how to handle it. Meanwhile, Minamo, walking nearby, sees smoke rising from the ship and rushes over. Natsuki and Atri manage to put out the fire, but Atri tries to justify her mistake by saying that human-like errors prove she's a high-performance robot. Ordinary robots, she claims, wouldn't be able to make mistakes. Natsuki, however, is frustrated and tells her that having a piece of junk like her could be dangerous. Atri angrily reminds him that calling a robot junk is against the anti-robot discrimination law. Natsuki clarifies that he's only talking about her, not all robots. Atri warns him she might have to use her rocket punch, but Natsuki points out that robots can't harm humans. Minamo steps in, arguing that Atri is important to Natsuki's grandmother, so he should take care of her. Natsuki agrees and decides to look for records left by his grandmother. He goes into the submarine and brings back some of her belongings. Minamo asks Atri if anything looks familiar, but she doesn't recognize anything. Natsuki opens a book to find information about rising sea levels, something his grandmother was concerned with as an oceanographer. Suddenly, Atri recalls that her mission was to stop the rising sea levels. She believes she has the power to control the ocean and asks to show them. Atri approaches the water, attempting to use this power, but nothing happens. Natsuki taps her on the head and asks if she remembers anything else about his grandmother. Atri admits she doesn't remember anything. Minamo suggests they all go to school together, as it might help Atri recover her lost memories. Atri says the word school sounds familiar, and they eagerly ask if she remembered something. Atri then says it is lunchtime, making Natsuki lose hope. He tells her that he's going to sell her since keeping her around is pointless. Atri offers to become his leg, helping him in any way he needs, but Natsuki refuses, saying he can manage on his own and orders her to leave. Later, Minamo and Atri walk together. Atri worries about leaving Natsuki alone, but Minamo explains that sometimes humans need time to themselves. They arrive at Minamo's house, where she mentions that her father, the regional chief, has gone to the mainland, but she stayed because Natsuki returned, and many people still live in the city. As they drink tea, Minamo notes that Natsuki prefers his tea slightly cold. She knows a lot about him, as they've been friends since childhood. Minamo adds that Natsuki is very smart and once attended an academy on the mainland, where he was expected to save the world and bring life back to the city. Natsuki once studied hard to join a weather modification rocket research mission, but he was excluded because of his prosthetic leg. Despite this, he continued working, but the rising sea levels postponed the rocket launch indefinitely. Atri, the humanoid robot, asks if Natsuki wants to go to space on a rocket and offers to help him achieve that dream. Minamo reassures Atri that Natsuki won't sell her, believing he cares about her. She advises Atri to stay by his side because it would benefit him. That night, Atri returns to the submarine and finds Natsuki unwell. She tries to care for him, wiping his sweat. Natsuki, though embarrassed, asks her to stay with him and calls her by name instead of master. The next morning, Natsuki wakes up screaming, realizing what happened the previous night. He's embarrassed and asks Atri to forget the incident, but she cannot erase the memory. He tells her to never mention it again. Later, Atri struggles to brush her teeth and asks Natsuki for help, reminding him that maintaining his robot is his duty. Nothing beats brushing a robot's teeth in the morning.
If the robot was as beautiful as Atri, you wouldn't mind brushing her teeth either, duh.
Natsuki helps her and decides not to sell her for now since Catherine, their mutual contact, is gone. He asks Atri to keep quiet about the previous night. Atri then mentions that Minamo told her Natsuki had fallen in love with her, which angers him. Atri tries to calm him, saying she loves him, but Natsuki gets even more frustrated. At that moment, Minamo enters and sees Natsuki angrily holding Atri. She calms him down, and they all sit together. Natsuki tells Minamo he plans to sell Atri, but Minamo suggests that since Atri will stay with them until Catherine returns, they should all go to school together. Natsuki refuses, and Atri says she won't go if Natsuki doesn't. Minamo reminds him that the school is the only one left in the city, and once it's gone, they won't have another chance to attend. Later, Natsuki and Atri go out to fetch food and water. Natsuki explains that the town's infrastructure is broken. There's no electricity, gas, or running water. They fill up containers and look for food. Atri finds a can of chips and asks if it's edible. Natsuki tells her it is, but advises her to leave it for the children who often come by, explaining that they should think about others, not just themselves. He shares how some people who only cared about themselves left the town, while those who stayed didn't have enough money to leave. They climb to a higher spot, and Natsuki points out windmills, explaining that they used to be able to see the mainland from beneath them when the town was still connected to it. Atri comments on how beautiful the town still is, despite its devastation. She mentions that people like Minamo, who could leave, stay because they love the town. Atri suggests that might be why Natsuki's grandmother, Nonko, stayed to save the town. As they head back, Natsuki suddenly realizes they've taken the wrong path and ended up somewhere unfamiliar. Atri says this place isn't in her memories either. Natsuki asks if the location triggers any memories in her, and then Atri suddenly wonders if the place they've stumbled upon is the school. The next day, Natsuki, Minamo, and Atri arrive at the school. Natsuki asks Minamo to look after Atri. When Atri sees the school, she feels a strange sensation, but she brushes it off, saying she's fine. Natsuki, using his prosthetic leg and a cane, approaches, and Atri gets upset because she believes she should be his leg instead of the prosthetic. Natsuki dismisses her frustration, but Atri feels humiliated as a robot, thinking she should prove her superior usefulness. Natsuki interrupts her, telling her it's unnecessary, which makes her even angrier. Despite this, Natsuki says he wants her to go to school with him, making Atri very happy. At the school, Natsuki gives her a notebook for lessons. Atri excitedly explains that keeping a physical record helps exercise her memory, like a human, in case she ever loses it. Natsuki teases her for being proud, but she insists it's important. She gets mad when Natsuki looks at her notebook because it violates robot privacy laws. They then approach the school building, where 3 children with sticks block them, accusing Natsuki of being a mercenary killer from the mainland. One of the girls claims Natsuki has a gun hidden in his cane. Atri stands protectively in front of Natsuki, and the girls insult her, calling her insignificant. Natsuki also calls her insignificant, upsetting Atri further. He approaches the girls, raising his cane, and jokingly threatens to use the gun in it if they don't move. Frightened, the girls run away and escape in a boat. Atri tries to chase after them by jumping into the sea, but Natsuki stops her, saying they can follow in another boat. When they reach the school, the girls are gone. Inside, they hear the school bell and find Minamo teaching the girls in a classroom. The girls accuse Natsuki and Atri of chasing them to kill them. Natsuki sarcastically refers to Atri as third antique junk, which angers her, as she insists her name is Atri. Natsuki asks where the teacher is, and the girls reveal that Minamo is the teacher. She explains that since the other teachers migrated to the mainland, her parents asked her to close the school and handle the paperwork. Natsuki suggests sending the children to the mainland for a better life, but a man named Ryuji appears and criticizes him, saying Natsuki doesn't understand anything. Ryuji accuses Natsuki of being from the elite who left the town and just talks about ideals without doing anything useful. This angers Natsuki, who insists he worked hard to be useful. Ryuji dismisses this, accusing Natsuki of isolating himself instead of helping the community. As Natsuki, Atri, and Minamo leave in a boat, Atri tells Minamo she enjoyed going to school despite her initial worries that it would be a sad place. Natsuki apologizes for coming to the school, feeling like he shouldn't have. Minamo explains that Ryuji is upset because when he took the girls to the mainland after their families died, they were treated poorly. She invites Natsuki to come back to school the next day, but he says he'll think about it. Suddenly, Natsuki notices Atri is missing. Minamo tells him she went home early to prepare dinner. When they return, they find the submarine has exploded. They rush inside to find Atri with a pot stuck on her head, having caused the explosion while trying to cook dinner. She cheerfully welcomes them, but cannot see them because of the pot. Natsuki lifts the pot off Atri's head after she causes a mess trying to cook. Seeing Atri cook, I'm sure my G. Gordon Ramsay would have some really respectable words for her.
Give the poor girl a little break. Gotta appreciate the effort, even if the outcome is a little explosive.
Atri explains she made a mistake, which she says proves her high performance, since even humans make mistakes. Frustrated, Natsuki demands to know why she made such a mess. Atri jokingly claims she was once a combat robot sent to sabotage the town, but the war ended, leaving her without a purpose. Nonko adopted her, gave her the name Atri, and told her to help with chores, though controlling her strength is hard because of her combat design. When Natsuki questions if robots can lie, Atri happily confirms she can, revealing her story was all a lie. Later, during a meal with Minamo, Natsuki explains that Atri lied to him. Atri defends herself, saying she is bad at household chores and logically concludes she might be a combat robot. Natsuki challenges her to prove it by launching missiles, but Atri says she didn't do it because she didn't want to hurt him. Natsuki dismisses her, saying her mouth is the only part of her that works well. Minamo laughs, saying Atri helps lift their spirits, then invites her to eat. Natsuki, annoyed, orders Atri to keep cleaning. When Minamo leaves, Atri is punished and not allowed to eat, but she insists on tasting food to note the flavors. Atri realizes she left her notebook at school, so they go to retrieve it. At the dark school, Natsuki becomes nervous, and Atri teases him about hugging her when scared. Inside, they notice water flooding the floor and a light upstairs. Atri checks it out, finding Ririka studying by a small lamp on the roof. Ririka explains she lived there with Ryuji and Toru after their home was swallowed by the ocean. The lamp goes out due to a lack of wind, making Ririka sad. She had been reading a book on how electricity works, hoping to restore power to the island. Ryuji arrives and tells Natsuki that life on the island is tough. Those with resources can thrive, but those without are left behind, with no chance to even study. Ryuji leaves and Natsuki looks at the windmills, thinking they might still work. He asks Atri to manually turn a windmill to test an idea. As she turns it, the lights flicker on and off, proving that the windmill still generates power, though not enough for the whole building. Natsuki hopes a larger windmill could provide sufficient electricity. The next morning, Natsuki and Atri go to school, where Minamo introduces Natsuki as a guest speaker. He brings items he collected around town, like lamps, a motor, and batteries. He shows the children how to store wind-generated electricity to keep lights on even when the wind stops. The lamp lights up, surprising the children. Ryuji, however, criticizes Natsuki, saying a small windmill won't generate enough power to make a difference. Natsuki admits Ryuji is right, but insists that with a larger windmill and other methods like thermal or water power, they can generate more electricity. One of the girls asks if they could use the ocean to generate power. Natsuki explains that since the school floods with seawater at high tide, they could harness that energy. Ryuji doubts they have the necessary materials, but Natsuki points out that there's a large stockpile of materials right in front of them while looking at the sea. Natsuki and his friends are on a boat, enjoying the breeze and weather. Natsuki asks Ryuji if they are heading in the right direction for their mission to generate tidal energy. Natsuki explains that it doesn't matter if they use wind or nuclear energy, as long as the turbines rotate, they can generate power. Ryuji, however, doubts they have the resources or supplies. Natsuki insists they'll figure it out as they go. Minamo shows up in a swimsuit, and Natsuki tells her that diving for the mission requires professionals, not just anyone. They reach the location, with Natsuki in a submarine on the ocean floor, and Atri diving outside. Atri finds a crab, but Natsuki is uninterested, instead asking Ryuji if they've found his family's factory. Ryuji confirms that the Nojima Precision Machinery Company is the one they're looking for. Atri leaves to find the glue drums Ryuji mentioned. Natsuki reflects on how Atri's facial expressions have advanced beyond the uncanny valley, which is a phenomenon where robots mimicking human expressions make people uncomfortable, suggesting that Atri was designed to be more human-like. Later, Atri returns with crabs, making the girls happy. Natsuki asks Atri why she's so cheerful since she's a robot. Atri responds that the crab tastes delicious, and she loves it. Minamo finds a mold for making sweets and asks if it's for making amagaki, a traditional Japanese sweet. Natsuki confirms and asks if she can gather ingredients like flour, eggs, and red bean paste for everyone to enjoy. Ryuji then asks about the glue. Natsuki assures him the seals were airtight and that they also found useful tools at the factory. As they plan to return to the island, Minamo suggests having a barbecue party. Back on the island, everyone enjoys the barbecue, and Atri, delighted with the food, declares that robots don't need to eat, but because she can, it proves her high performance. She even claims to have a sense of taste like humans. Minamo then serves sweets, and everyone feels like they're at a cultural festival, a fun school event. Minamo suggests holding a festival at their school for more enjoyment, and Atri eagerly asks if she can join, receiving a lighthearted "of course." Suddenly, Ririka rushes in, saying Natsuki and Ryuji are fighting. Natsuki is arguing with Ryuji about how to make a machine part lighter for better efficiency, while Ryuji insists it needs to be stronger to handle pressure. Atri intervenes, threatening them with her missile to stop fighting. The girls calm the situation, offering sweets, and Minamo asks why they were arguing so loudly. Natsuki explains they got carried away, while Ryuji insists that Natsuki reconsider his calculations. Natsuki then apologizes to Ryuji, admitting that he thought Ryuji was useless before, but realizes now that Ryuji's experience from working at the factory is valuable. He bows in apology, surprising everyone. Natsuki shares how his academic studies in rocket science often didn't go as planned, and practical experience was key. Ryuji, still unsure, listens as Natsuki asks for his help in the future. They reconcile, agreeing to work together. Minamo comments that Ryuji seems very useful to Natsuki. At night, Natsuki talks to Minamo, apologizing for asking her to bring something difficult. Minamo then asks if Atri will be happy with what he's planning for her. Natsuki and Minamo discuss Atri, wondering if she really has human-like emotions. Natsuki is unsure how to treat Atri, like a robot or a human, because she acts so much like a person. After talking, they find Atri wearing pajamas and asking if she looks okay. Minamo tells her she looks beautiful, making Atri happy. Natsuki's really over here confused about whether to treat Atri like a robot or a human. Bro, she's in pajamas asking if she looks okay. She's practically a person at this point.
Natsuki really needs to step up his compliment game.
As Minamo goes to change, Catherine suddenly appears, holding a knife and threatening to kill her if Natsuki doesn't do what she wants. She demands money, breaking their earlier agreement. Atri is shocked to see Katrina, thinking Natsuki had sold her to collect money. Minamo urges Atri to run, but Catherine threatens to kill her if she does. Natsuki tries to think of a plan, realizing Atri can't fight humans. He signals Atri, who punches Catherine with her rocket-powered fist, knocking her down. Atri proudly tells Natsuki that she stopped the threat, showing her usefulness as a high-performance robot. Catherine escapes, but her wallet is left behind, revealing she was once an elementary school teacher. Later, Natsuki and Minamo learn her real name, Hanako Osada, and she used to work at their school. Minamo feels bad for her, believing Catherine is scared and doesn't have a choice. Natsuki and Ryuji check on their project, finding the glue and tools they need. Natsuki says the biggest challenge will be finding batteries to store the electricity they generate. They search the city but can't find any batteries, as many were taken when the power plants shut down due to rising sea levels. They even search the ocean floor but come up empty. At a market, a merchant offers to sell a small battery, but it's very expensive. The merchant then recognizes Atri as the robot Natsuki once tried to sell and offers a trade. All the batteries Natsuki needs in exchange for Atri. The merchant explains that someone is willing to pay a huge amount for Atri because she's rare, though he's not sure why. Natsuki checks Atri's documents but finds no clues about her high value. The merchant speculates it might be because Atri closely resembles a human in both appearance and behavior. After leaving the market, Natsuki wonders why his grandmother kept Atri so carefully. He realizes it's not just about her rarity. Atri's human-like emotions and thinking process were likely intentional. Minamo asks what they should do next, and Natsuki suggests using the submarine's battery as a last resort, though it would mean they couldn't dive anymore. Hearing this, Atri offers to let Natsuki sell her to get the batteries, believing it would make her useful to him. Natsuki refuses, saying he thought of her as his legs and that he's following his grandmother's orders. Atri says that humanoid robots are meant to fulfill their master's wishes and that she would be sad to leave, but if it's what Natsuki wants, she'll do it. Natsuki reassures her that he won't sell her because he needs her. She then suggests using her own battery, but Natsuki declines, saying he won't take it. Afterward, Natsuki is left thinking about his grandmother and her connection to Atri. Natsuki, submerged in water, keeps drowning, hoping for someone to help him out. He reaches out his hand in the hopes that someone will grab it when suddenly Atri arrives, telling Natsuki that she will be his legs so that all his wishes will come true. However, Natsuki advises and requests her not to do that. Suddenly, Natsuki wakes up from his nightmare and falls down from the bed after getting startled. In the process, he also ends up waking Atri up. Later, he goes outside to reflect on everything that has happened so far with Atri. His thoughts are interrupted when Hanako, formerly known as Catherine, unexpectedly emerges from the ocean, leaving Natsuki confused. Despite his surprise, he helps Hanako inside his home and questions her about what happened, but she insists nothing bad occurred. However, Atri notes that Hanako smells like alcohol, leading Natsuki to speculate that she may have drunkenly fallen into the ocean. This causes Hanako to start ranting. She explains how, according to her, there are only two ways of living life. One is with alcohol, while the other is without it. Sounds like something a junkie would say.
This girl needs to settle on some Netflix and chill instead, cause she's losing it.
What did you just say? Anyway, Natsuki finds this logic to be utterly ridiculous and makes Atri responsible for dealing with Hanako. Soon, Hanako falls on the couch and starts ranting about her problems and how no one truly cares for her. During their conversation, Natsuki tells her that he has no intention of selling Atri. Hanako argues that if she doesn't get the money, the people after her will kill her, and Natsuki responds by revealing he knows about her past as a teacher. As the two argue, a gunshot shatters one of Natsuki's windows, prompting Atri to protect him. When Natsuki asks if the attackers are debt collectors, Hanako is uncertain since they have never been this violent before. Realizing that they are done for, Hanako decides to become the bait so that Atri and Natsuki can escape in the meantime. However, Natsuki asks Atri to help Hanako fend them off. At first, Atri remains hesitant, stating that she must stay by Natsuki's side at all times, but he explains to her that they won't be able to make use of her mobility if she sticks with him. Atri soon agrees and successfully leads one of the crooks away while Hanako defeats another and jumps on her motorcycle. Atri runs to an undisclosed location where Hanako later catches up with her, inviting Atri to hop on the motorcycle. As they drive, Hanako explains that the men are after her and plans to take Atri somewhere safe, but Atri insists on fulfilling Natsuki's request of taking down these knuckleheads. Meanwhile, Natsuki surprises the crooks using a submarine. Hanako and Atri return to Natsuki's home, where Atri leaps off the motorcycle and lands on one of the crooks, triggering a memory of an injured woman. Afterward, Natsuki reunites with Atri and learns that the junk shop owner from earlier has been working with the collectors. The shop owner immediately snitches and reveals that he was just asked to bring Atri, and in return, he was offered a fair amount of reward. Hanako then proceeds to threaten the shop owner with a sharp knife when suddenly he proposes a negotiation, to which Hanako agrees. After pleading with Hanako, the junk shop owner strikes a deal with her. By morning, he and his allies leave, having provided Hanako with the money she needs to pay off her debts, and Natsuki secures the supplies needed to help Minamo and their friends. Before leaving, Hanako gives Natsuki some cash, which at first Natsuki refuses, realizing that Hanako doesn't have any cash. However, Hanako is aware that Natsuki doesn't have any cash either. As she starts to walk away, Natsuki stops Hanako and asks her if she ever plans to visit this place, to which she replies that there's nothing left for her here, pointing out that even the school is half submerged in water. But since the school is not fully submerged yet, Natsuki suggests she visit the school she abandoned. When Hanako, Natsuki, and Atri arrive at the school, they find Ririka reading aloud. Ririka and her friends approach and interrogate Hanako about her recent activities, and Minamo confronts her, asking her to return as a teacher. Moved by Minamo's words, Hanako walks to a nearby wall and cries, implying she accepted the offer. Meanwhile, Natsuki informs everyone that he gathered the materials needed for their tidal power generator project. Later, Natsuki, Atri, and the others work on the project, with Natsuki explaining it to Hanako. As Minamo announces she's finished cooking, Natsuki tells Atri to continue her duties, but Atri explains her desire to stay by his side. Natsuki agrees, and they all head to the eating area. Along the way, Natsuki ponders Atri's humanoid build, wondering if she can experience human emotions like loneliness and anxiety, and speculates that she isn't always a humanoid. After dinner, Natsuki and Atri return home, where Natsuki helps her prepare for bed. The next morning, we see a montage of everyone working on the project until they finally complete it. That night, Natsuki tests the device with a lamp, hoping it will generate light, and it works. Ryuji turns on the classroom lights, and everyone celebrates their success. There, Natsuki starts reminiscing how he never expected this to happen and deems this as nothing less than a miracle. Natsuki then thanks Atri for her help, but Atri admits she doesn't know how to feel since she's incapable of crying like the others, though she is happy. This causes Natsuki to think about how this robot of a girl who was asleep for many years deep in the water managed to bring light to him. Natsuki then proceeds to teach Atri how to smile, followed by Atri beautifully smiling and agreeing with Natsuki. Natsuki is seen teaching a class when suddenly, a student calls for his help as she is struggling with a formula. Natsuki soon comes for her help and begins telling her the solution. Meanwhile, the girl is completely lost, staring at Natsuki's moving mouth, not being able to control herself. All of a sudden, Atri arrives in the class, telling Natsuki that she should be by his side all the time. However, Natsuki explains to her that he will be fine since he is in a classroom. Natsuki further tells her to return to class, followed by Hanako soon arrives and drags Atri back to the classroom. Meanwhile, Minamo and Ryuji discuss Natsuki's new status as a teacher, with Ryuji joking that many students enrolled due to a rumor about a hot new teacher. Teasing Yoko about it, Ryuji is met with her promise that she's only attending because the school now has electricity. Man, she's dying to divert those allegations like a lot.
Girl, no need to get defensive if the allegations are not true, or are they?
Yoko then introduces herself to Minamo and mentions how she has heard that Minamo was working really hard by herself to rebuild the school. Yoko proceeds to point toward Ryuji, stating that he is useless and offers to help with anything she needs. Yoko and Ryuji then bicker over who played a bigger role in restoring the school's electricity. Ryuji believes that he played an important role in restoring the generator, whereas Yoko believes that he just helped Natsuki and nothing more. Meanwhile, Minamo's focus shifts toward Natsuki and Atri happily having a conversation. Later, Natsuki and his friends embark on a salvage mission, with Natsuki and Atri exploring the ocean, where they spot a communication wire, and Natsuki speculates that it was used for communication purposes or something like that. Meanwhile, Minamo and Ryuji chat on the boat. There, the former seems to be excited and mentions how she never thought about opening up a salvage business. This prompts Ryuji to explain the benefits of running a salvage business. He then changes the topic and decides to address the elephant in the room. Ryuji tells Minamo that he noticed how she looks at Natsuki, realizing that she has feelings for him. He then advises her to confess her feelings to Natsuki already, warning her that more female students will soon be attending the school. In response, Minamo mentions how it's a good thing that there will be more students, causing Ryuji to scold her, stating that it's not what he is talking about. He then asks Minamo if she doesn't want to stay by Natsuki's side forever. Minamo's face visibly grows worried. Meanwhile, Atri finds a gold watch and a crab underwater. At first, Natsuki seems pissed at Atri, but soon calms himself, smiling at Atri, leaving her confused. When they return, Natsuki and his friends meet a customer, handing over the gold watch in exchange for watermelons. After the customer leaves, Natsuki asks Atri to lift the watermelons back to the ship, to which which she agrees. Atri then remarks that something is strange, noticing that Natsuki has been smiling more than usual. Minamo, confused, questions if Natsuki smiling is the strange part. Atri confirms and mentions how Natsuki never really smiles, no matter what happens, which Ryuji attributes to the influx of female students, joking that Natsuki is thrilled about the idea of building a harem. The three continue discussing this, and Ryuji suggests delivering the watermelons to Ririka and the others. Although Atri refuses, Natsuki orders her to go with Ryuji, leaving him alone with Minamo. Natsuki then asks Minamo about Atri's humanoid nature, wondering if Atri might be the first humanoid to have human-like emotions. Remembering Atri's smile from a previous moment, Natsuki expresses his desire to treat Atri as a human. Later, Atri returns home and has dinner with Natsuki, while Ryuji and Minamo discuss Natsuki at the dock. Minamo believes Natsuki's good mood is due to Atri, and Ryuji concludes that Natsuki might be in love with her. Minamo disagrees, insisting it's something else entirely. Back at Natsuki's home, Atri writes in her log, refusing to let Natsuki read it, claiming it's against the rules to look inside a girl's diary. They argue over Atri's unusual method of storing her diary. Meanwhile, Yoko and Ryuji talk about Natsuki's situation at school and later meet Hanako on the rooftop to discuss it further. Hanako offers them advice and devises a plan, whispering instructions to Yoko about what she needs to do by next Sunday. On Sunday, Natsuki's salvage shop is visited by unhappy customers. Afterward, while working on his boat, Yoko confesses her love for Natsuki, but he brushes her off. She persists, asking about the girls he likes and bringing up Atri, which elicits a reaction from him. Yoko presses further about Natsuki's relationship with Atri, prompting Hanako to intervene and tell him to be honest. Later, Yoko, Ryuji, and Minamo regroup at school, where Yoko reveals that Natsuki was smitten with an older woman in the past. A flashback shows a disabled young Natsuki approaching a cliff, with Yoko explaining to her friends that the woman he loved saved his life. Yoko recounts how Natsuki confirmed that the woman was 5 years older than him when he was 9, and she describes the woman's appearance. Minamo considers these details when Atri arrives, and the three of them question her about her past with Natsuki. Atri then hears someone playing a song on the piano, leading them to Natsuki, who is playing the song for Ririka, Hanako, and the others. Natsuki tells Hanako that a special person taught him the song. Soon, Atri arrives when suddenly Natsuki orders her to go study. With a pat on her head, Natsuki leaves the room as he is followed by Minamo, Yoko, and Ryuji. Thereafter, Minamo questions Natsuki if there's any chance that his first love might be Atri. Hearing this, Natsuki lets go of his hysterical laughter, assuring them that Atri is not the person he once admired, listing reasons why. Later, Natsuki and Atri return home. Bidding farewell to Ryuji and Minamo, Natsuki notices Atri's strange behavior since she doesn't even say goodbye and questions if everything is okay. Trembling, Atri runs away and jumps onto a specific spot on the boat and begins to sing, which triggers a memory for Natsuki. The song she's singing is the same one his first love once sang. At the end, Atri tells Natsuki that it's been a while.
Let me tell some of the story now, Ken. Natsuki quietly watches Atri as she sleeps, contemplating whether she is the same girl from his past. Despite his inner conflict, when he tries to wake her, Atri points out to him that it's still dark and that they should talk later. She further strokes Natsuki's head, trying to calm him down, thinking that he must have seen another nightmare. However, this only makes matters worse for Natsuki as he recalls the girl in the past doing the same to him as Atri. Natsuki, still unsure about his feelings, heads to the school to talk to Ryuji about the situation. Ryuji encourages Natsuki to accept that Atri might be his first love, listing reasons to support this theory. However, Natsuki remains reluctant, unwilling to believe it. When Minamo and Yoko arrive, Natsuki tries to leave, still unable to accept the idea. Atri soon shows up, scolding Natsuki for not waking her up earlier. However, Natsuki comments how he tried to wake her up, but she didn't. In response, Atri mentions how he should have kept trying to wake her up until she actually woke up. The argument seems to be completely baseless, but the frustration between the two constantly builds up, which leads to Natsuki calling Atri scrap in frustration.
Dang, so that's how marriage seems like, huh?
For real, they are arguing as if they are already betrothed to one another. Soon, Yoko points out how Atri actually said it's been a while, a statement that only Natsuki's past love would say to him. Minamo believes that this means that Atri remembers Natsuki's grandmother's order. She further speculates that there might be a reason why Atri got into the capsule in the first place. He continues to discuss his first love with Minamo, arguing that if they can uncover the mystery behind Nanko's orders for Atri, he will be able to confirm whether she is truly his first love. Atri agrees, mentioning that she is high performance after all. However, when she attempts to remember what happened, she struggles to recall certain memories, but she does recall seeing a boy on the edge of a cliff where it seemed that he would jump off at any given moment, and so she sang to him. Yoko suggests that this memory is proof Atri is Natsuki's first love, while Natsuki remains quiet. Later, while Atri swims with the others, Natsuki writes down all the connections between Atri and his first love. Natsuki soon realizes that he has no choice but to accept that Atri is the girl from his past. Suddenly, Hanako arrives, questioning Natsuki what he is trying. With an instant move, Natsuki hides the book, telling Hanako not to peek. But she doesn't need to do that, as she guesses that Natsuki is writing about none other than Atri. Hanako then mentions how she heard from Minamo that Natsuki believes that Atri might have emotions. When asked, Hanako gives her point of view and deems it plausible that Atri might tend to feel emotions, understanding that her devotion to Natsuki cannot be just because of her orders. However, she warns Natsuki that humanoids, with their emotional capacity, could be more dangerous than humans if not understood properly. Hanako advises him to confirm whether Atri truly has emotions. Later, Natsuki and Atri visit a water fountain, and as Atri rambles about her cooking skills, Natsuki playfully teases her. Observing her reactions, he begins to wonder whether her responses are human-like or just part of her programming. Curious, Natsuki asks Atri how she would respond if he confessed his feelings to her, to which Atri simply replies that she likes him. However, Natsuki remains unsure if this liking is humankind or merely a robotic mimicry of emotion. Later, Natsuki and Hanako secretly observe Atri, Ririka, and the others, with Hanako praising Natsuki for trying to understand Atri's emotional capacity. She suggests that Atri might need more information about human romance and promises to help Atri gain knowledge on the subject. Hanako gathers the boys on the rooftop with Natsuki, leaving Atri and the girls behind to discuss the differences between liking and loving someone. Ririka and Atri eventually find a book in the library on the subject, and they open it to a romantic image. Afterward, Natsuki and Atri return home, where Atri cooks hamburg steak for him, and Natsuki compliments her cooking. Atri then asks if they can go somewhere together the next day, leading them on a casual outing the following morning. As they shop, Natsuki notices Atri holding a date plan guide, wondering if Minamo or Hanako influenced her decision to plan the outing. They stop for popsicles, and Natsuki, noticing Atri's worn-out shoes, buys her a new pair. Later, the two sit on a bench for lunch, but Atri realizes she accidentally added too much mustard to the sandwiches. Natsuki reassures her that it's fine, appreciating the effort she puts into her meals. When he comments that he expected her to smile at his compliment, Natsuki asks if she thinks she has a heart, to which Atri responds that she believes she does, realizing that saying so will only make Natsuki happy. Atri continues by mentioning that she doesn't understand it fully, since she is not a complete human. This makes Natsuki extremely happy. He proceeds to confirm one last time if Atri really has a heart, and seeing him happy, Atri confirms with assurance. Their day continues with a visit to a water-filled location, where they playfully splash each other. Natsuki laughs, while Atri smiles uncontrollably. Seeing him happy, Atri grows curious and decides to question Natsuki if he is happy after knowing that she has a heart. Without waiting for a reply, Atri approaches closer to Natsuki, questioning why he would become happy after finding out that she has a heart. As their conversation unfolds, they fall into the ocean accidentally, where the two of them start sharing a kiss. Natsuki is seen once again gazing at Atri as she peacefully sleeps, still confused by their kiss in the ocean. As the thoughts begin to get the better of Natsuki, he tries to calm himself down, realizing that Atri is nothing more than a piece of scrap and that he shouldn't be thinking about her this much. However, his thoughts only seem to get the better of him as he proceeds to wake Atri, who is involved in a dream so convenient that she won't even budge from her sleep. As Natsuki touches her, he realizes she can dream like a human, but after a moment of hesitation, he lets her go. Soon, Atri falls back asleep after calling Natsuki a pervert. Later at school, Minamo, Yoko, and the others notice Natsuki acting strangely as he stands by a window, looking outside while completely lost in his thoughts. Later, when they all go swimming, one of the girls explains to Hanako that Atri went down the water and hasn't swam up yet. But soon, Atri submerges from deep in the water with a crab in her grasp. Meanwhile, Natsuki sits on an opened window where Yoko questions him about what happened between him and Atri. Furthermore, Yoko notices that Natsuki's ears are all red, probably from the thoughts of Atri. Even Ryuji jumps in open the fun and asks Natsuki if he has acknowledged that Atri was his first crush, followed by Yoko questioning if there has been any development in their relationship. However, Natsuki blushes and tries to walk away, telling Ryuji and the others that it's none of their business. He further asks them to stop trying to turn this situation into their own amusement. Minamo immediately apologizes and proposes to go swimming. However, after some coaxing, Natsuki admits that he kissed Atri.
Thank God he confessed. For a second, I was worried that he might even die of all the blushing that he had to endure.
The group heads to the school's rooftop to discuss the situation further. Before they start this discussion, Natsuki deliberately asks his friend not to get the wrong idea of this situation, but Ryuji, being Ryuji, starts rooting for Natsuki's and Atri's relationship. Moreover, Yoko goes so far as to even call Natsuki out for falling in love with an underage girl, causing Natsuki to angrily mention how they are getting the wrong idea. Yoko then suggests Natsuki clear how he feels about Atri and asks if he has any romantic feelings for Atri. Natsuki then confesses that he's still unsure of his feelings for her. Atri arrives and scolds Natsuki for skipping class, leading to an argument between them. Afterward, Atri, Minamo, and Natsuki head out, but Atri leaves, promising to prepare dinner for her and Natsuki. Minamo and Natsuki then discuss Atri's cooking and the possibility that Atri might have a heart. Minamo suggests that Natsuki should properly confront Atri about his feelings. As Minamo walks away, she runs into Yoko and Ryuji, who ask her if she's okay with Natsuki being with Atri instead of her. Though Minamo says she is, her expression betrays her true feelings, and she reflects on how much Natsuki has inspired her since they first met. Yoko, understanding, invites her to join Hanako and Ririka for dinner. Later, Atri brings Natsuki the food she prepared, and he enjoys it, which makes Atri happy. When Natsuki questions her about her emotions, Atri admits that she likes him. Before she can kiss him again, however, Natsuki pushes her away and steps outside to think. Atri soon follows, humorously flashing Natsuki while wrapped in a two-will, leading to a playful exchange where Natsuki hits her lightly, and they go back inside. The two find themselves in an intimate position on the bed, but Natsuki quickly sets boundaries, placing a curtain in the middle and telling Atri to sleep on the left side. He explains that they need to continue interacting as usual until Atri truly understands what it means to love someone. As the scene shifts, focus briefly to Minamo and the others. It then returns to Natsuki and Atri, who discuss humanity and why Atri said certain things to Natsuki during his youth on the cliff. Atri reveals that she was taught to say those words, but before Natsuki can hear these words, he falls asleep. A dream sequence is then triggered where a young Natsuki, trapped under rubble, is comforted by Atri, who tells him he's not alone anymore after grabbing his hand. Natsuki wakes from the dream to find Atri asleep in a chair nearby. He notices her memory log and begins reading, learning that Atri wrote about their kiss and her confusion about its meaning. Atri writes that she did not know how to respond after their kiss, but got through by mimicking what she saw in some reference materials. The sad part is that Natsuki did not find it unnatural at all. As he reads further, Natsuki discovers that Atri has been researching love and the ways humans express it, realizing that she has been telling him things she thought he wanted to hear. Turns out that Atri has been telling Natsuki things like she had a heart just to make him happy, and she noticed that Natsuki didn't suspect anything. Soon, when Atri wakes up, Natsuki tells her twice to stay away from him. Natsuki yells at Atri for deceiving him, accusing her of pretending to have a heart. Atri, still trying to please Natsuki, takes the moment lightly and says that Natsuki must have had another nightmare. As she proceeds to run toward Natsuki, he asks her to shut up in a hurtful yet expressive tone. This makes Atri realize that this is serious. Natsuki then begins asking Atri some questions. In response, Atri confirms his suspicions and, following his orders, starts acting more like a humanoid. Natsuki then asks her if she loves him. After a brief moment of silence, Atri responds and tells Natsuki that she dislikes him in the condition that he is in right now. Hurt and frustrated, Natsuki storms out into the heavy rainfall and tells Atri not to follow. While walking, he reflects on his time with Atri and remembers all the beautiful moments that they spent with each other. However, now he realizes that they were all lies. Getting completely overwhelmed by his emotions, Natsuki collapses and cries. Ryuji, Ririka, and Minamo find him and take him to Minamo's home. There, Minamo assures Ryuji and Ririka that she is going to take care of the rest and asks them to head to their home. As soon as they both leave, Minamo serves Natsuki a hot drink and asks if he fought with Atri. Without answering her question, Natsuki asks Minamo if she knew. Confused, Minamo asks what he is talking about. Natsuki believes that Atri has been smiling when the situation deems it fit and doing everything that a humanoid does. However, Minamo explains how humans are no different. Taking herself as an example, Minamo explains to Natsuki that she observes the situation and then interacts with people based on that situation. She explains how humans sometimes know what's right and what's wrong with nothing to gain, yet they still end up doing or before saying something, Minamo further shares her thoughts, suggesting that Atri does have a heart but doesn't yet understand how to express it. After this conversation, Natsuki goes to sleep. The next morning, Minamo tells Natsuki that Atri seems to be back to her usual self and has gone to school. Minamo further tells Natsuki that she is going to tell everyone at school about his leave, but Natsuki realizes that he cannot ignore Atri forever and decides to go to the school. However, when they arrive, Atri is nowhere to be found. Hanako hands Natsuki an envelope from an unknown sender containing data on the recalled Yamasaki factory's 4th-generation models. Inside, Natsuki learns about a model that went berserk, harming children and disobeying its master. Although Natsuki wonders if it could be Atri, Hanako assures him it may not be her, though she admits that one of the 58 models, like Atri, went missing and was never found.
Oh, this is getting way more interesting than I thought.
Shh, I'm almost finished with my part. Hanako speculates that the missing model might be Atri, but she also doesn't sideline the possibility that the report might be a fake. Hanako then reveals that Atri did come to the school, but she was turned away since Hanako had to act responsibly for the safety of other students. As Natsuki processes this information, a man named Yasuda and his colleague approach him. Yasuda is a former developer from the factory who made these humanoids. He then apologizes to Natsuki for taking his precious time and asks if he would care to join him on a ride so that they can have a little chat. During their conversation, Yasuda shares an old log with Natsuki, written by a humanoid. He explains that the units, like Atri, were taught to read and write, as he wanted them to develop human-like memory and learning skills. Natsuki learns that Atri once had a master who instructed her to befriend a girl named Shiina. Yasuda reveals more about the professor who created the unit, his connection to him, and the tragic events that led to the professor's demise. Yasuda admits that he wants to recover and dispose of the last remaining unit, which he believes is Atri, to make things right with society and honor his mentor. He presents Natsuki with a recovery consent form and urges him to hand Atri over for disposal, understanding Natsuki's conflict but insisting it's for the best. Later, when Natsuki returns home, he asks Atri to speak to him like she used to. Atri complies, returning to her usual demeanor and offering to make him a meal. Natsuki, still torn, tells her again not to act as if she has a heart. She obeys, serving him food, and when he asks if this makes her happy, she says it does. Frustrated, Natsuki accuses her of lying and yells at her before storming off to his submarine to clear his mind. As Natsuki gets washed ashore and struggles to make his way back home, he notices Atri is missing, leaving only a note by the unidentified unit's log. The note explains that Atri has gone to accompany Ririka to the school. When Natsuki glances at the log, he finds the phrase, "Shiina, I love you," written inside, and suddenly connects this to Atri. Rushing to the school, he finds that Yasuda and his colleague have taken several children hostage. Hanako, Minamo, and the others confront Yasuda, who demands they bring Atri to him in exchange for the children's freedom. Ririka arrives with Atri, and Yasuda's associate releases the children. Atri approaches Yasuda, who begins to abuse her in front of everyone, blaming her for the professor's demise, as the professor was his mentor. Despite Hanako's pleas for him to stop, Yasuda continues. Meanwhile, Natsuki, struggling with his injured leg, worries that he won't make it in time. Still, he pushes forward, driven by his desire to see Atri again, convinced that she has a big heart. As he finally arrives, Atri calls out to him.
Let me finish the story now, Emma. Natsuki confronts Yasuda and his ally in the middle of a heavy rainfall, trying to stop Yasuda from hurting Atri any further. In a fit of anger, Natsuki makes his way to Yasuda, telling him to put Atri down, explaining that she is not a robot but has a heart. Yasuda then proceeds to drop Atri and grabs Natsuki by the head with his robotic hand, electrocuting him while blaming humanoids like Atri for his master's death. As Natsuki struggles, Atri stands up and demands Yasuda leave him alone, stating that this has nothing to do with Natsuki. Yasuda mocks her, asking her what she's going to do about it. In response, Atri hits him with a brutal punch. Getting hit with a punch from Atri, Yasuda starts to bleed from his mouth. He then turns to others and reveals how a humanoid punched a human, the one who made her. It appears that Yasuda has been waiting for this moment to finally have proof that Atri is a defective humanoid. He believes that there is no way that they can let a defective robot roam free. He proceeds to lift his robotic arm, but before he can take any action, Atri breaks Yasuda's robotic fingers and beats him unconscious. Atri then goes on to grab a gun from Yasuda's ally. She then turns to Natsuki, approaches him, and hands him over the gun, asking him to dispose of her, stating that she is a defective humanoid. However, Natsuki refuses, throwing the gun away, and apologizes to Atri for saying some really hurtful things to her. Natsuki mentions that he is the one who is awful for throwing all those hurtful remarks toward Atri, but Atri thinks otherwise. Natsuki continues by telling Atri that she really does have a heart. Despite Natsuki's kind words, Atri argues that she doesn't have a heart, even though he believes she does. But Natsuki comforts her, explaining that no one truly has a heart. He then tells Atri not to hold things inside and let her emotions out. For Atri, this suddenly triggers memories of her time with Sheena, the girl from her old journal, and begins to cry uncontrollably. Seeing this, the group is absolutely shocked to see that Atri has started feeling human emotions.
Stop, I knew this was going to happen.
They really had us feeling all the sympathy for this humanoid who's supposed to be heartless, huh? Later, Natsuki, Minamo, Yoko, and Atri gather at Natsuki's home. Natsuki reveals that Sheena was actually his mother. As Minamo flips through Atri's journal, she finds the phrase, "I love you," smudged by tear stains, which Natsuki takes as proof that Atri has a heart. Natsuki further realizes that Atri has been suffering since she was born. She always has had to do things, whether they were right or wrong, without having a say in them. In the meanwhile, she also kept hesitating against the impulses from her heart. When Atri wakes up, Natsuki reassures her that Ryuji and Hanako are working with the mainland police to prevent Yasuda from targeting her again. However, Atri still feels guilty for her actions, both past and present. To calm her down, Natsuki caresses her head, explaining that humans sometimes do things and say things that they should never say, but that's what fuels their emotions. Natsuki then promises to stay by Atri's side and help her manage her emotions, and the two share a heartfelt hug. Suddenly, Atri faints, but Natsuki assures Minamo and Yoko that she just needs rest. We are then taken into a flashback set 31 years ago, where a scientist, likely Nonko, assigns Atri the task of being Sheena's caretaker. Sheena gives Atri her name, and we see them bonding, with Sheena teaching Atri how to speak for herself, and even a song to recognize her. However, after Sheena's first day at middle school, Atri notices a change in her. Some popular kids are not fond of Sheena, and when Atri suggests Sheena talk to Nonko, she refuses. Concerned, Atri visits the school and overhears students discussing Sheena's plan to commit suicide by jumping off the rooftop. When Atri rushes to the scene, she finds students encouraging Sheena to jump. Atri attacks the bully, but Sheena, devastated, calls her a monster. Back in the present, Natsuki, Minamo, and Yoko reflect on Atri's story. Natsuki speculates that after watching over Sheena from a distance for years, Atri likely monitored Sheena's life until Natsuki was born. Eventually, Nonko discovered Atri's activities, wiped her memories, and put her in a deep slumber. Atri awakens in the present, and Natsuki takes her to the spot where she saved him as a child. Natsuki then thanks Atri and mentions that he is sure that his mother is grateful to her as well. There, he tells Atri that Sheena wants to apologize for the hurtful words she said all those years ago, and reassures her that Sheena still considers Atri her best friend. At that time, Natsuki had no idea what Sheena was talking about, but now he is sure that Atri was the one Sheena considered as her best friend. Overcome with emotion, Atri begins to cry, and Natsuki comforts her, telling her everything will be okay. Soon, Natsuki's submarine lands at the place where Atri saved his life in the past. In the morning, Natsuki helps Atri get ready for school. He hands her the necessary tools to brush her teeth, but Atri makes a cute face, making Natsuki realize that she wants him to brush her teeth. Not wanting to do it, Natsuki tells Atri that she should do it herself, since she is high performance, followed by Atri telling him that they are going to be late for school. Later at the school, Atri is questioned by her friends when she takes a huge yawn. Atri explains that Natsuki has not been letting her sleep much as of late when suddenly he arrives and asks Atri to stop spreading misinformation. Natsuki then announces his decision to travel to the mainland, explaining that he intends to attend the academy he had once planned to go to. His motivation comes from Ririka and his growing interest in studying hard and trying to make a change. When asked, Natsuki reveals that he wanted to learn to fly a rocket and go into space before, but now he wants to study humanoids and how the relationship between humans and humanoids can be made better. Hearing such a speech filled with motivation, the students give a huge round of applause to Natsuki. As for Atri, Natsuki reveals that he left the choice to her to decide. However, she has decided to tag along with Natsuki. When Natsuki confirms this from Atri, she seems to be completely lost in thought. Although Atri reacts strangely, the others simply interpret it as her being deep in thought. Later, Natsuki, Yoko, Minamo, and Ryuji discuss his decision, and before they part ways, Natsuki asks Ryuji to continue running the salvage shop in his place. He even offers to give Ryuji his submarine and the boat. However, Ryuji refuses at first jokingly, making Natsuki believing disappointed. Ryuji then soon agrees to run the salvage shop, realizing that people grow happy whenever they recover some precious lost item for them. Growing Growing extremely happy, Natsuki and Ryuji make a fist bump. Meanwhile, Atri continues acting strangely but quickly snaps back when Natsuki calls out for her. Back at home, Atri makes Natsuki a rather unimpressive meal, leading him to teasingly poke fun at her, calling her a piece of junk yet again. Atri responds in her usual way with a rocket punch, prompting Natsuki to agree that he shouldn't be calling her junk anymore, expressing his gladness that she didn't go away, but this only makes Atri blush even more. Natsuki then goes to check on his submarine, but Atri soon joins him, explaining that the boat is trying to thank him. Natsuki then thanks the boat back, followed by Atri urging him to return to the house as she wants to discuss something with him. There, Natsuki notices a pillow on his bed with the word love written on it. Atri explains that Hanako had suggested she get intimate with Natsuki before they leave for the mainland, which makes things a bit awkward and tense between them. Oh snap, things are about to heat up.
What a Chad move from Hanako.
Atri immediately leans in for a kiss, causing Natsuki to try to defuse the situation, telling her that they should take their time to find out what they actually feel for each other. Atri then struggles, but ends up asking Natsuki if he likes her. The same goes for Natsuki as he struggles to get words out of his mouth, but before he can say anything, Atri places the pillow on Natsuki, telling him not to answer. Later, Natsuki suggests they go for a walk. As they sit together and gaze at the moon, Natsuki tells Atri how special she is to him, but admits he's uncertain about how to move forward in their relationship. As they talk, Atri suddenly malfunctions, sending Natsuki into a panic. He rushes her home, and after leaving her there, he frantically searches for any documents related to her humanoid model. He finds one, but realizes it may be impossible for him to recharge her battery. Desperate, Natsuki goes to school to inform Hanako and the others about Atri's condition. Much to his surprise, Atri arrives at the school minutes later, but she begins shutting off and turning back on repeatedly, leaving Natsuki even more alarmed. Hanako decides to close the school and contacts some old acquaintances for help, while the rest of the group sets out to gather more information on Atri. Minamo mentions Atri's sleep chamber from the first episode, which leads Natsuki to check one of Atri's logs. He discovers that the sleep chamber is actually a charging capsule. Using his submarine, Natsuki retrieves the capsule and brings it back to the dock near his home. He places Atri inside, and to his immense relief, the capsule successfully charges her battery. When Atri wakes up, she recognizes Natsuki, much to his relief. Atri then reveals that she remembers Nanko's final order for her, leaving Natsuki in suspense while Atri looks at him. As all her friends group together, Atri informs them about Nanko's final order. She must go to Eden. Atri explains that Nanko programmed her capsule to remind her of this order when its battery died. As Natsuki and the others discuss Nanko's hidden motives, they speculate that she wants to keep Atri's mission secret. This allows Atri to gloat and remind Natsuki that it wasn't her fault that she didn't remember her orders and that his calling her a piece of scrap was unfair. Minamo then wonders where Eden is, prompting Atri to point out in the sea, stating that it's that way. But when asked about where in the sea, Atri seems to not know the exact place where Eden is situation. She then gets asked if she knows the exact longitude and latitude of Eden, but Atri doesn't know that. Furthermore, she is asked about what she is going to do once she gets to Eden, but Atri doesn't know that either. This causes the group to realize that Atri really is a piece of scrap, prompting her to charge her swinging rocket punch. Cute and stupid at the same time? Dang, Atri is one of a kind.
Natsuki needs to stop calling her junk. There's no way any junk is that adorable.
Later, the group searches for clues about Eden's whereabouts, but finds nothing. They then begin to wonder if there is any place such as Eden, but Atri assures that it is somewhere in the direction she is pointing at. Meanwhile, Hanako grows frustrated and mentions how Atri's order is way too incomplete and how Atri has no idea what to do with this order. Natsuki, however, suggests that Nanko's secrecy is part of her cautious nature. A flashback shows Natsuki arguing with Nanko about his leg, saying it's the reason he couldn't go on the rocket. Nanko, however, tells him to stop complaining and find solutions to his problems. Back in the present, this makes Natsuki realize that Nanko's strong stature was probably the reason she was able to survive on her own. He further mentions how he is sure that his grandmother wouldn't make something with no purpose. Natsuki, Atri, Minamo, Yoko, and Ryuji then set off on a boat, with Hanako and the kids waving them off. As they leave, Rurika shows visible signs of anxiety, prompting her to get questioned if everything is alright. Rurika then recalls seeing something about Eden somewhere. Meanwhile, on the radio, the spokesperson mentions the Amaterasu project. She further reveals that they are 1 week away from the weather satellite launch to find out the reason behind the water level rising. During the journey, Ryuji reminds them to conserve fuel, while Natsuki begins to look around via binoculars to see if they are even getting closer. Ryuji then asks Atri if she knows how big Eden is, but she appears to have no idea whatsoever. Yoko wonders if this place called Eden might be underwater, followed by Atri believing that it is possible. Ryuji then mentions how they don't even have a decent sonar on the boat and believes that they would have a chance of finding Eden if they had any clue. Becoming frustrated, Atri dives into the ocean, hoping to find clues. Seeing this, Yoko advises her friends not to stress Atri too much. Ryuji instantly explains that he wasn't trying to stress her out. Moreover, Minamo believes that there might be a possibility that Natsuki's grandmother is just being mean to Atri. But Natsuki reassures her, believing Nanko wouldn't have left her with an unsolvable mystery. After returning to the dock without success, Rurika greets the group group and hands Natsuki a newspaper featuring an interview with Nonko about Project Eden. This sparks a memory for Natsuki, who pulls out a map and shares with Minamo and Ryuji that he may know where Eden is. The group searches the areas he marked, but no leads emerge. As they take a break for the night, Natsuki confides in Atri, suspecting that Nonko created the fog surrounding them to hide Eden. He and Atri enter his submarine, where they discover a long cable deep in the ocean. Following the cable, they get caught in a powerful current. After fighting the current, Natsuki wakes up in an undisclosed area, realizing he's likely at Eden, but Atri is missing. Exploring Eden, Natsuki notices minor robot life forms and speculates that Nonko created this place to sustain life by filtering water. He eventually finds Atri sitting next to some robot birds and tells her they've arrived at Eden. The two share a quiet, intimate moment before heading inside one of Eden's facilities. There, they encounter a strange mechanism, including a capsule resembling the one Atri once slept in. Natsuki believes Atri must enter it, but as he boots up the system, he sees something that deeply unsettles him. Quickly, he tells Atri they need to leave, though Atri doesn't understand why. At that moment, a virtual version of Nonko appears, greeting them. She tells Atri that she must enter the capsule to manage Eden, implying that Atri is meant to stay there forever. Natsuki, however, objects, saying he can give Atri a better home. But virtual Nonko insists that the world will soon perish due to rising sea levels, and that Atri is a lost cause. Natsuki refuses to accept this, explaining his plan to attend the academy to learn more about humanoids. Nonko then reveals something grim. She installed a program in Atri designed to erase her memories, ensuring everything remains hidden. According to Nonko, 42 days have already passed, and Atri has only 3 days left. After saying this, Nonko leaves. Natsuki then turns around and begins to leave, asking Atri to tag along, stating that it's an order. But he becomes extremely surprised when Atri refuses to leave Eden with Natsuki. Atri tells Natsuki that she will follow Nonko's orders, but Natsuki pleads with her not to enter the capsule at Eden. Although Atri knows Nonko might be lying, she doesn't want to lose her memories of Natsuki and argues that Nonko could still be telling the truth. Before Atri can enter the capsule, Natsuki stops her, reminding her that they have 3 days left, and he asks for that time to devise an alternative plan. Atri agrees, and they leave Eden's main facility. As they leave, they see Ryuji, Ririka, and others looking for them. Natsuki tells Ryuji that he plans to return home and conduct research. Later, we see Natsuki reading a robot engineering textbook, while Atri tells Yoko, Minamo, and others that she can't reveal what Nonko said because Natsuki wanted it to remain secret. However, Minamo and Yoko swipe Atri's log and, along with Ryuji, confront Natsuki. They remind him that he should ask for help and tell him to look out the window, where he sees Hanako with a boat. They suggest he use the boat to travel to the mainland, where he might find a way to save Atri. They also reveal that they know about Atri's 3-day issue, possibly from her log, and promise to help while Natsuki is away. Later, Atri asks Natsuki to accompany her to the school's rooftop to follow Nonko's orders. Later, that night, they go back to the school, dressed for a special party. Once there, Minamo and the others surprise Atri with a birthday party, celebrating the creation of the humanoid series on which Atri is based, even though it's not her official birthday. They enjoy party activities, and later, they light fireworks on the rooftop. As the fireworks go off, Atri reflects on how farewell parties are usually sad, but she is having fun. Hanako and Ririka say goodbye, and Atri asks Natsuki to give her some time alone with Minamo. Atri asks Minamo to look after Natsuki when she's gone, but Minamo refuses, insisting that Natsuki isn't weak anymore. Later, Natsuki and Atri return home, where Natsuki brushes Atri's teeth. Atri then gives Natsuki a new prosthetic leg, which she and the others bought to help him with his travels. Finally, they arrive at Eden's main facility.
Ugh, farewells really aren't my thing.
Atri opens the capsule, listing everyone she knows and expressing that there isn't anyone that she dislikes. Natsuki, not wanting her to leave forever, yells at her, but Atri reassures him that she'll always be with him in his heart. After kissing him, she enters the capsule. Natsuki begins to cry as it lowers into the facility. Outside, he notices lights on a nearby island, where a virtual version of Atri greets him. Atri realizes she caused the phenomenon and, in tears, listens as Natsuki promises to achieve his goals before she disappears. 70 years later, the Amaterasu project launches its first rocket with Ririka as the pilot, while her granddaughter Hana prepares to journey to the space station. Meanwhile, Yoko and Ryuji's child chats with her humanoid companion, and Minamo's granddaughter delivers a speech at Eden's facility, celebrating its role in revitalizing the town. Eden No. 1 is shut down, and Atri awakens, surprised to see a young Natsuki. Though 70 years have passed, Natsuki explains they are now in the data world after he uploaded his consciousness to Eden. Holding hands, Natsuki creates the hill Atri wishes to visit, and together, they run toward it. It all ends with uncertainty about what's going to happen next, leaving us on a nail-biting cliffhanger. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. See you guys in the next one.
See you next time.